Hello, gorgeous. You're listening to the Girlfriend's Guide to Starting Over. On this podcast, we talk about everything from dating and relationships to personal development. We also speak very candidly about the F word, and by that, I mean failure. So grab a pen, tag a friend, and let's talk about it. All of it. Undergoing, overcoming, and simply trying to make it through. Right. Well, I'm going to start recording now. Hi. Good evening. Hello, gorgeous, as I like to say. This class is navigating the grief and loss this holiday. And this is my second masterclass of the season. I'm super excited about the opportunity to chat with you all tonight. This masterclass is near and dear to my heart because I recognize that while there is all this hustle and bustle of the season, there is a large population of people who are fragile and they're healing, and there's this hole in their heart. There's an empty chair. And I wanted to just take an opportunity this season, especially last month and this month, to pour into that group of people. And so tonight we're going to talk about several things. But first things first, we're going to try to first assess loss as a whole, because grieving is not just about grieving the loss of a loved one. It could be a job, a home, many other things. And then we will move into the stages of grief and what they may look like, because oftentimes, even when we know the stages of grief, when we're in the middle of them, we don't recognize that's what's happening. And then we'll move into some adjustments that we can make. And then I'll follow up with some resources, and then we will be done. I'll open the floor up for questions if you have any, and I'll also allow the opportunity for you to ask me questions privately. If you use the chat, you can send me a message independently, or you can just drop it in the chat all together for everyone to see, and I will follow up with those questions. So let's get started. So managing grief and loss. Grief is the acute pain that accompanies loss. I like to say that grief is the final act of love, because where there is deep grief, then typically that means there was great love, there was great connection there. And so many of us never even consider that we have been grieving for a lifetime of loss. Something has happened that says, Kayla, I needed to be in this class. Yes, I'm going through something right now, but think back to your first loss. Your first loss. Maybe your family moved to a new home or a new neighborhood. Maybe you had a friend or a loved one that moved away. Maybe your family went through a divorce and your parents separated, or you lost a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. Think about those sorts of losses. Maybe it was a family pet. Maybe it was a natural disaster like a fire or a flood, or we recently in Tennessee, we had the tornadoes. Anytime that we experience loss, it can be very impactful to our mental health. And the thing about loss is, when we lose something, the rest of the world just keeps going like nothing happened. And I remember being in a situation when my grandmother died. I thought, how cruel. Does no one know that she died? Does no one know that I'm sad? Does no one know that we're grieving? And we carry that from place to place, from situation to situation. We lose houses, we lose relationships, we lose friends, we lose family, and life keeps going. And so do we. And sometimes it feels like we're stuck, but regardless of what happens, we keep going through the motions. And so when you think about it, when was the first time you experienced loss? What did that feel like for you? It might have brought up feelings of sadness. It may have brought up feelings of anger, of confusion, of bitterness, of loneliness, of fear. And all of those things are completely logical. They're completely normal. It's nothing that other people don't experience. But when you're the person who's experiencing it, it can seem really isolating and almost unbearable. Now that we've considered the first time that we've experienced loss, let's think about the most recent time. that we've experienced loss. And some of us might be right in the brink of it right now. And it's like, Kayla, you know what? That's really, really painful. I think back to, we're in 2023. We're literally on the heels of coming out of the pandemic. As a whole, we as a society have lost a lot. Over the last 3 years, we've lost coworkers, neighbors, clients, friends, church members, family members. We've lost spouses. We lost our peace of mind, a sense of control. We literally lost so much. And then one day, life just picked up, as if the people and the places and the things, as if they were never there, life just picked up. And so I want to just take a moment to acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the magnitude, the gravity of all that we've lost as a whole. How do those things make you feel? I know lots of times clients and patients will tell me, well, I feel really uncomfortable talking about it because I don't want people to feel sorry for me. And sometimes people don't feel sorry for you, they feel sorry with you. Or people will say, well, nobody really talks about it. I feel like people are avoiding me. It's because lots of times people aren't really sure what to say. And so I frequently say people who have lost their loved one want you to speak their name. They want you to remember their memory. They want to say to you, you know, I'm sorry for your loss. He or she was an amazing person. How are you? And I know when someone says, how are you? You want to say, I feel like I'm invisible. I'm disappearing. I'm wasting away. But you say, I'm fine. And the truth is, when someone says, how are you? We really want to know. And you can say, I'm coping. I'm making it. I'm doing the best that I can. You don't have to lie. You do not have to lie. And so tonight, as we navigate those feelings, we put them on the table, because lots of times there's a lot of feelings. We put them on the table. I want you to just kind of mull over that. Like, what are the feelings? When we identify the feelings, we can start to decipher how to tackle them. But first, we have to identify them. And it's okay right now if you don't know what those feelings are, or if they're a mix of many feelings. I've said in several trainings that two things can exist at the same time. Okay. And we'll talk about that in the stages of fear, in the stages of grief. Earlier this week, I shared a post and I said that grief is like glitter. And anybody who's had kids, anybody who's experienced glitter knows that it doesn't matter how much you clean. It doesn't matter how much you try to get rid of it, how much you sweep, once you have opened glitter, it is everywhere and you can never get it all. And grief, like glitter, no matter how much you cleanse, no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you cry, no matter how much time has passed, it collects in the corners. It's underneath something. It's wedged in the corners somewhere. And so it's hard to say, when will this pass? I don't ever tell people it gets easier. I don't say that it gets easier. I say the days where you are stricken get fewer and further in between, but even that also takes time. If you listened to my podcast earlier today, I compared grief to a ball in a box. When you lose a loved one, you're gifted a box, and the box has a button in it and a ball. And when you press the button in the box, every single time you feel pain, it is a stomach pit pain where you're crying and you're wailing, you want to crash to the floor. It is unbearable. And the ball is inside the box, and the ball hits the button, and you feel the pain. Now, over time, the ball shrinks. And so the instances of that ball hitting the button are fewer and further in between, but every single time the ball hits the button, it feels the same. And that button can be hit at any given moment by a song, by a smell, by a sound, by a movie clip, by a commercial, by it could be anything. When the ball hits the button, it hurts. And sometimes the ball is really big. And so it doesn't take much for the button to get hit. And then other days, the ball is a little bit smaller. So it may not press the button all the way, but it still nudges it just enough that it hurts. And that's my best comparison for grief, because it's not like it goes away. It just does not live in the heart of your chest eternally. It's just every now and then something happens. So this process is accompanied by the stages of grief. There are 5 stages of grief, and they're not linear. I think that that's the most important thing to know, is that they are not linear. It's not like you're going to experience one after the other. They're all mixed up, and you could experience them in any order and at any time. But the first stage is denial. And denial is maybe if someone is terminally ill when you first get the initial diagnosis, where you're like, no, not my mama. Mm-mm. No way, that's not happening. Or when you first find out and it's shock and it's like, you've got the wrong person. This couldn't be that. This is not happening. Or the person is deceased and it's a couple of days and they're like, hey, we need to go to the hospital. We need to go to the funeral home. We need it. And it's like, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. And it's denial because acceptance of the truth at that point is far too painful. And so you go into a process of a denial as a protective factor. And last year, one of my very dear friends lost her son, and she said to me, Kayla, I went to the hospital, I identified the body, but still days and days after, I was expecting him to call and let me know that it was just a cruel joke, that I had been in an accident, that it was just a bad dream. That's how deep the levels of denial can be. And then there's anger. And lots of times people are angry with themselves. They're angry with their loved one for leaving. They're angry at the situation. They're angry for the circumstances. They're angry for all the things that they've missed out on. They're angry at God. And then there's the guilt for being angry at God. It's like, God, how could you do this to me? And then you're guilty for being angry with God. And I'm here to tell you that He can handle it. When He created you, when He formed you in the womb, and He saw like out through all of your lifespan, He knew that you would be angry in this time. He can handle it. I say all the time, you can experience any emotion that you need to experience. We just can't stay there, right? And so when I was going through therapy for the loss of my grandmother and for the loss of my cousins during COVID, I lost all of these people very closely back to back, 5 family members back to back. My therapist said, Kayla, God does not take our loved ones, He receives them. And that lifted such a weight from me. It's like, you are absolutely correct. God doesn't take our loved ones, He receives them, because death is an appointment. And there's nothing that we could do to change the trajectory of that. And I say nothing we could do because that leads me into the next phrase, which is bargaining. Lots of times it's like, no, God, if you heal my mama, if you heal my sister, if you heal my husband, there's nothing I won't do. I'll start going back to church. I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to cook all the meals. I won't fight. We start bargaining. What if I had done this differently? What if I had just called? What if I had just showed up? And we have 1,015 what ifs. Years, months down the road, people are still asking what ifs and having all sorts of questions, bargaining. This is a part of the process. You're not crazy. You're not insane. This is a part of the grief process. And I just want you to know and to remember that death is an appointment and you are not that powerful. You're not that powerful that you could have prevented or stopped that. Could things may have been a little bit different? Yes. But the truth is that before the foundation of the world, these things were laid out, and we aren't sure what the purpose is. And right now is not the time for someone to say to you, oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, often what doesn't kill you kills you, gives you trauma, is what actually happens. But it's one of those things that you're experiencing this now, and we're not even sure how it's going to pay off in the future. We get to trust the process that it will. That even if the benefit of this is so that you can share your story with someone else so that their journey is a little bit easier, there is something that comes from this. I don't know what it is, but stick with it, okay? The next phase that comes is depression. And depression, when we think of depression so frequently, we think of it as the crying spells. I can't get out of the bed. I don't want to take a shower. I'm not eating. I'm not sleeping. And it could be complete opposite. It could also be, the depression where you're crying and you won't take a shower, but it could be where I'm eating everything in sight and I'm gaining a whole lot of weight. It could be that I'm sleeping excessively or I'm not sleeping at all. And then after you experience a lot of these symptoms for 2 weeks in a row, then we are approaching what is called clinical depression. And there is a whole diagnosis and DSM information for that. But basically, if there is a loss of interest in things that you genuinely used to enjoy, for instance, if you're a quilter and now you don't want to quilt anymore, or if you love to watch Law and Order and you just don't want to watch Law and Order anymore, or you used to be super active and take morning walks every day, it's expected for you to miss a couple of walks. But if we are going into month 3, 4, 5, and you're not taking a walk and you don't have any interest in taking a walk and you don't miss taking a walk, we need to start looking at getting some outside services. I say this with love. It's okay to have Jesus and a therapist too. It is okay. I highly recommend that you do that. There is no shame in seeking help. I think so many more barriers could be broken down and we could get further along. And I also recognize right now you may not have the energy for that. And so, fortunately, there is teletherapy. So you can do online, you can do via phone, you can check in with a coach, and they can recommend you to a therapist if they're like, hey, this is a little bit outside of my scope. There are so many resources that you can utilize. Okay. And then after that depression level gets so far down, people can experience suicidal ideations, that longing to join their loved one, that like feeling of emptiness and like, I don't know how to move forward. I don't want to be here. Should you or someone that you love express those thoughts, even a fraction or a hair, I want you to call 988 and get services immediately. Okay. Someone will talk to you on the phone, someone will walk through this with you. And that's a very serious thing. And you never have to feel ashamed for that all the time. I tell people all the time, if all you did was exist and get through the day, I'm so proud of you. And it's not uncommon. It is not uncommon. It's an illness. Being depressed, being suicidal is an illness, and there is help for it, and there is support for it, and people do move and recover from it. Okay. And so after the depression phase, lots of treatment, lots of love, lots of strength, lots of therapy, there becomes hope. And hope looks like figuring out what the new normal is, how to navigate. It doesn't mean that we forget about our loved one, and it doesn't mean that we're never sad or we don't have blue days. It means that we start recalibrating. We start figuring out, you know what, I'm going to have breakfast today. You know what, I'm going to go out to church today for Sunday. I'm going to go to church today, or it's Wednesday night. And I think, you know what, I think I will go to the sports bar and watch the game. I think I will go back out and watch my grandchildren at the ball game this evening. It's little bitty things, little bitty steps. And the best part about this process is you get to set the tempo. You get to set the tempo. People are going to try to rush you out the door, try to pull you in and be like, oh, you should come out with us. I want you this season to take a good assessment. Skip out on things that make you feel overwhelmed. Fill yourself up with things that make you feel good. And just keep an eye on it. You get to decide, okay? We're going to move into making adjustments, just so that we can kind of talk about what that looks like, okay? I've got papers inside your workbook so that you can take notes on that. So my first thing is, what can you delegate this season? What can you delegate this season? So if you are typically the person who hosts the big holiday dinner, if you're typically the person who bakes the dressing and all the cookies and all the baked goods, what can you delegate this year? Is it possible? Would the whole world fall apart if you got your cakes and cookies from Sam's? Is it possible that you had your recipe and you called your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your friends and said, hey guys, I'm not really feeling up for making cookies, but I got my recipe. You guys can use my kitchen or you can just come and pick it up. And why don't you guys make the cookies this week? Why don't you guys do the baking? Is it possible that we can use someone else's house for Thanksgiving? I'm just not feeling up for decorating and I don't really want to put up a tree. There's nothing wrong with delegating. You can go out to a restaurant and eat so there's no dishes. Like, what can you take off your plate so that you can tend to your heart? Is there someone else who's ready to step up? Last year, my aunt asked me, I have a really big family. And last year, my aunt called and she said, Kayla, we lost Ashley, who is my first cousin. She said, I don't feel up to hosting the family ceremony. We do all this singing and praying, and we have story time and all these things. And she says to me, I'd really appreciate it if you could handle that. And it was an honor that she trusted me enough to handle the family ceremony instead of scrapping it, which she totally could have done, and everyone would have been accepting of that. She asked me if I could handle that for her. And I was like, what an excellent testament to her as a person who says, I can delegate this and I'm willing to pass the torch. Where can you pass the torch, or where can you hand it off until you get enough strength? The next thing is, how can you honor your loved one this season? Making adjustments. How can you honor your loved one? Um, I think the hardest loss I've ever had was definitely my grandmother's, followed by my uncles. Both of them loved Christmas so much. And so it was really hard for me to put up a tree and to do the decorations and do all the things. And so one of the things that I did was ordered ornaments. And I got ornaments with my grandmother's name. And then we got some from the funeral home that had her picture on it. And it's just little ways, little memorabilia that we can put on the tree to honor her memory. I have a cousin who I lost during COVID. She loved to bake gingerbread. Loved to bake gingerbread. She's the only person in this family who could bake gingerbread. I've tried 2 years in a row and I've ruined them. And all I can think about is the hysterical laughter that she would have had watching me try to manipulate this dough to make the gingerbread. Or she made spiced tea, which my sister picked up. And is it as good as hers? Absolutely not. But we find joy in trying to recreate these things. Now, it's not something that we could rush out and do the very first year that it happened. It was so painful. But in order to ensure that we honored their memories, we started to figure out little ways that we could incorporate them and keep their memory alive for the rest of our family and for our children. So, what are other ways that you could do that? Perhaps donating to a charity. Everybody curling up and watching their favorite movie, baking their favorite dessert, putting a candle in the window. It's just little bitty things. You could do something as big as naming a star or baking a Boston cream pie. Just something small that says, you're still here with us because I'm still here. And so I just want to encourage you to think about that over the next couple of days. What is one way that you could honor them during this season? And again, I get it. Everybody is at different places in their healing journey. So it could be as small as lighting a candle or baking a dessert. Or you could go big and donate to a charity or have everybody come over and we're going to decorate the tree and talk about stories and we'll tell our favorite story about this person. Whatever it is, make it count and make sure that when you feel overwhelmed, you're able to step away or to come back. You say, Kayla, I'm not up for a tree this year, but you know what I could do? I could probably I could probably go to the store and pick up a Boston cream pie. Just something small. Just something small. And pace yourself. I know lots of people say, well, push yourself. Kayla says, pace yourself because in timing, you'll know when it's time, okay? And the last adjustment that I typically tell people to do is, or suggest that people do, I don't really tell people to do anything, is what are we doing instead? And so if we're not careful, the holiday comes and we seep into this pit of despair. And we lie there and we're covered in blankets and we don't eat, we don't sleep, and we don't move. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do instead? We know it's going to hurt. My friend last year, she did a pancake cook off with her children that are still living. And so they came over and they did a pancake cook off. And she's like, Kayla, I got out of the bed. And I didn't ask her to do a pancake cook off. I said, sis, can you make me a promise? And she said, I'll try. I said, I just want you to change your pajama shirt. You don't even have to change your pants. It could be as simple as I promised myself on that day, I'm going to change my pajama shirt. I'm going to get out of the bed for one meal. I am going to, I'm going to enjoy the meal that I eat. Perhaps you're going to order Chinese takeout because you don't feel like cooking. Like whatever it is, make yourself a promise so that you keep moving forward. Your loved one is gone, but your memory is still there. And they would not want you to sit and wallow in slop. And we know that, right? We know that. And it's like, Kayla, I'm hurt. I'm sad. And what we desire most is that comfort for them. What would they want for you to do? And how can you honor that in some way? Those are the questions that I want you to just kind of keep on your heart is as we go through the next couple of days, what could you do? What could you possibly do? So it is, how can you honor them? What are you going to do instead? And what can you delegate this season for somebody else? All right, so I'm going to invite you to something super cool. First thing first, let me give you some resources. So, resources that I have for you obviously are you can step into a coaching session with me, no obligation, where we can sit down and chat, and I can say, hey, why don't we look for somebody to step into therapy with you if I feel like it's far more advanced depression than I'm able to handle with this current scope that I have. We can work through ways that we are going to get back on track. We can do that together. If you just say, hey, Kayla, can you help me find a therapist in my area? I can definitely do that if you send me your zip code. If you're here in Nashville, I can definitely make recommendations. I have really close therapists that are males and females. And then I have the crisis line. If you text home to 741-741 anywhere in the US, the crisis people will reach out to you. Or if you dial 988, that is for if you are in imminent danger, thinking of hurting yourself, thinking of harming someone else, you or a loved one, you will immediately get mental health help for that. Okay. If you're hoping or looking forward to the opportunity to work closer to me in 2024, I have 3 opportunities that are on the table through the end of December. I have the Bounce Back, which is first. It's a 90-day program where we would work together on whatever of your choice it is. It could be your goals for 2024. It could be starting over in love, life, figuring out how to put your feet back on the floor, career, literally anything. We could do that. The cost for that is $297, and it's 3 months worth of coaching. You get weekly calls, and I do have Easy Pay. And then the second option is the 2-part 2024 strategy call, where the first call we kind of map out what your goals are for the year, and then the second call we break those goals down even more. And then that one is let me see, 150. And then Get a Grip Gorgeous is emotional mastery, where we pick your big 3 major emotional blocks or issues and we dive into those. That is a coaching call, and you get a template for that, and that's $97. Again, everything's on Easy Pay, and you don't have to step into anything with me. If you just want to chat, if you jump in my DMs and you need something, we can make me your own offer. Say, hey, Kayla, this is what I would like to do for you or do with you. I can come up with a package for you if you're interested in that. As always, you can hang out with me in the Plot Twist community group because I love on y'all all the time. And there's tons of free content from my podcast to my website to my Facebook to my YouTube. Like, you guys know where to find me, and I'm here to serve and support you. I love you. I want the best for you, and I'm praying for you this season and always. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions. If you don't have any questions, that's cool too. I just want you to know that I'm here and I care. No questions? All right. Well, you guys have an excellent evening. I love you to the moon. I'm around, and I will repost the masterclass in the Plot Twist community group, likely on the podcast. You can expect it by Thursday of this week. Have an excellent night on purpose, and we'll talk soon. Well, gorgeous girl, that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you found value, insight, or strength. I hope something was said that gave you the courage to push on a little while longer toward the life of your dreams. If you felt motivated during this segment, screenshot this and throw it in your stories and tag me on social. That way we can keep the message going. Have an excellent day on purpose, and we, girl,